Hey, welcome, friends. My name is Mandy, Fat Mandy, and Shay Lawson and myself are the co-chairs of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee of the Songwriters of North America. We're very thankful that you are joining us today, and we are very thankful for both of our guests. We are welcoming for this digital fireside chat and virtual salon for Pride Month, our host, Liana Maneese. She is Brazilian born and Pittsburgh raised, and she is an award winning activist, visionary entrepreneur, doula, and catalyst for creative engagement. Liana is the co founder of the Good People's Group, which provides deep, purposeful, and intentional small group consulting focused on individual growth, social justice, and historical multidisciplinary learning to create safe and equitable spaces. Liana's background includes degrees in cultural studies and clinical mental health applied psychology. Our guest and fellow SONA member is Yoko. And Jay is a pioneering leader in the music industry, educating rising creatives on what the industry purposefully keeps hidden. Jay currently owns and operates J Yoko Entertainment, a boutique consulting and creative development agency created to assist creatives in building successful careers in the entertainment industry without the help of a label. Jay is a member of the Recording Academy, the Grammys, and as well serves as a Grammy U mentor. She also co-curated their newest endeavor, the Art of Music Tour, a music and financial literacy seminar. So we're going to let them talk. And if you have any questions, we would love to hear them, but please put them in the Q&A box, the question and answer box. And once we have concluded with our fireside chat, then we will go through those. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Liana and to Jay. Thank you so much.
Yay. Thank you so much, Mandy. All right. Hey, Jay, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I was just like, let me flip this around so I can see you better. I'm so happy to be here with you. We have a lot of sort of little things in common too, which is, the first thing that kind of came to mind was our very justice oriented sort of entrepreneurial mindsets.
Absolutely. Always the hustler mind.
Yeah. It's interesting because sometimes, one side of it is like, okay, we're hustling, we're moving. And the other side of it is like, you really have to create the things that don't exist, to find yourself and to figure that out. Sometimes you just got to make your own.
Absolutely. That's exactly how I started doing what I was doing. I couldn't find a person who was going to do it, so I just became that person. So that's dope that we definitely have that in common, making sure that we, satisfy not only our own needs, but helping everybody else at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what makes us free. I'm so excited to have this conversation in this very important month. One of the things I wanted to sort of just lay out there is in our, sweet little boxes here with our beautiful faces, we have written our pronouns. So I wanted to draw attention to this idea that this is becoming finally, a norm, that we're starting to see really pop up everywhere. It's like this expectation, which I really appreciate. And so I just wanted to make sure that we talk about our pronouns. So do you want to go first, Jay? What are your pronouns?
Sure. So I go by she, her, and they. All depends on how I feel when I wake up in the morning, be quite honest type thing. I think people think differently because I am a masculine presenting woman that I do have different pronouns, especially because of the fact that I have a deep voice. Like a lot of people think that I am making this up. I have sounded like this since I was 7. You feel me? So I've been Barry White all my life. There's nothing I can do about it type thing. So that makes it even more important for me to have these conversations and try to teach people about, pronouns and how to, talk to people just overall and respectfully, because I've had this issue my whole life.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I consider myself a queer person. My pronouns are she, they, and I feel very similar in the sense that I realized that I didn't really talk about it for a lot of my life. And that part of it was just because I didn't care. It was very much based on like, what do I feel like? I was an athlete when I was younger. It was like, one day I could wear, heels and a dress and feel very, feminine. And the next day, I was like out on the court, like, and people would often, think I was a boy until they saw that I had long hair. And there was a lot of sort of comments about, gender and all of these things being very based in the way that we look and appear. And so I appreciate, that it's so much, that's like hardly any of it, it's like so much of it is about really truly who you are. So when you're approached with this, what do you say? How do you answer these questions when people kind of throw out there, well, what does this mean? Or why do you even care about pronouns and things like that?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is actually like answering their question, right? Because some people take offense to it, like when they're asking these questions and you're not answering. So they're asking, it might not be the most respectful way because they don't know, right? It might not be, it might be a little too abrasive, but again, it's because they don't know. So they're asking these questions to get an answer. So instead of avoiding them, the biggest thing I do is like, answer it, and I break it down in whatever kind of energy that I get when it's given type thing, right? So if somebody comes off a little abrasive, it's like, it means this, and this, but when you're kind of matching it, it makes you like, all right, cool. It's like, so do you want to learn or do you just want to get the answer? It's like, all right, well, break it down to me then. It's like, okay, cool. Now we that's at least a respect level where you're trying to figure it out. So the biggest thing for me is answering it and not avoiding it.
Yeah, I mean, what you're bringing up and is sort of the thing that makes us the most angry, I think, when we talk to people about really any differences that we have, is the response tends to be very defensive at first, and so there's this line that you learn how to walk. It's like, when are you like, no, you need to figure that out on your own, actually. And when are you like, actually, I'm going to invite you into this right now? Do you base it on how you feel or who the person is or what? How do you know when you want to go there and when you're like, nope?
It definitely is a combination of like how I feel, and I want to say like the energy that's given, right? You can tell when some people are sarcastic, right? And just being on some, so like, what are you? And it's like, that's when I'm being sarcastic back. What are you, bro? Like, do you even know what you are? And then next thing you know, they kind of scratching their head. Like, I know but do you really? And then it just the mind type thing. But when I'm approached by some people that's like, I ain't even trying to be funny right now, but like, how do I address you? Do I call you bruh? Do I call you sis? Like, do I call you? And I'm like, I'm just Jay. You feel me? Like, for you, this is what you say. Because for me, I kind of have different nuances for depending on who you are type thing. You feel me?
Right.
There are some people, so just like you, like, I really didn't care my entire life, right? I was always, since I was young, I was always asked, are you a boy or a girl type thing? Because that was just, it was me. I was different. I had dreads when I was 7. You feel me? Like, I cut all my hair off when I was really, really young type thing. I was always playing sports, but when it came to, boys team and the girls team, I want a girls team. What you mean? Like, I wanted the girls type thing. But at the same time, I'm gonna go hoop. I'm gonna go play karate. I was in marching band. So that whole connotation of, okay, you're one of the boys, just like I am, but I'm going shopping with the girls for prom type thing. You feel me? So I have that both aspect going with that as well. So when I get to a point now, there are some people who know me from when I was younger and when I didn't care. So we have that connotation of them coming up to me, we're like, what's up, bro? Hey, what's good? How are you? Now that I'm not going to say not only care, but just I'm more aware of who I am as a person. Depending on who you are, depends on what I'm going to tell you what to call me type things. If you're new and I have no idea who you are, she, her, they, that's how you approach me. If you want to do the bro sis, you call me sis type thing. I don't know you like that, for you to be able to know like who I was before type thing, when that's how we made the relationship. So it's very much, however I'm approached is how I answer it. If you come off, rough and you're trying to be sarcastic, I'm gonna throw something back that's gonna make you kind of blow your mind. If you're coming off of straight, genuine, just trying to figure it out, I'm gonna give you a true answer.
Yeah. I mean, so much of it and so much of what we're here today to sort of break through is just this idea that we should all have the right to just be. Like, there doesn't need to be all of these, layers and complications, and who, we get to decide who we are, and we get to tell you, and that naming of ourselves, I think is so drastically important. There is, this quote that I see floating around all the time that's one of my favorite things, which is this idea that, I'm going to probably not say it exactly, but I'm going to do my best to paraphrase, but that we've been taught to fear, the very things that have the potential to make us free, or to set us free. I believe like Alok Menon, and there's a few other people that I've heard similar ideas from, but that idea that like we're afraid to go there, that this is that understanding all of these differences, whether it be, race, gender, sexuality, all of these different layers, going there and truly understanding it means we have to name ourselves. Like you said, like, do you know who you are? And I love that, because when I'm teaching, I so often hear this idea of, do you know who you are? And we will go through these practices of naming who you are. And many people have no idea. They're like, I never did this before. Like, I never wrote down like all of these layers. Or they're like, I wrote down one aspect, but not another. They haven't really sifted through that. So I wanted to sort of talk about a couple of things. I wanted to open the floor to you to go in any direction you want, and thinking about, what are those things that you commonly hear? What are those things, the language? What are the things that people are usually coming at you with? And what are the ways that you fire back more specifically around, in your mind, that's like really about keeping people free? Like, this where I'm going is where I want you to go. Like, I want everybody to go here, right? Like, I want everybody to come to this place. So how do you navigate that are there specific instances, especially in the music industry, that you really feel like this is showing up? I'm sure on a daily basis for you, really.
Definitely. Every single day with me. Specifically, so I work, the artists I work with are more on the rap side, right? So I have a rap artist that I manage, I have an R&B artist that I manage, and I consult with just like tons of different artists from walks of life. And the biggest thing that you realize is just there's a different respect level for different people. And I think me being a part of the LGBT family, right? It's so weird, even with family, even with just like, okay, if anybody knows about Black families, like, it's different when you talk, it depends on who you're talking with, right? So for them to accept me, oh, that's Jay, she's cool, that's sis is LGBT though, sis is gay, you feel me? But when you get to that other person who maybe looks different, comes from a different walk of life, talks different, specifically when it comes to us on the hip hop side, the males cannot stand the gay males, right? But they're cool with me, which I think is something that I'm trying to teach them so much. And it's like, you can't be cool with me and not cool with them, because we're all the same, right? And I know you know that we're different, but technically we're all the same. Number one, a lot of us, we're all black or brown, you feel me? So it can't be a them versus us thing. Like, the biggest thing that I tell people, and when I break it down and I put it this way, they always giggle. I say, listen, on these here pants that I have one zipper, right? So I can only be in control of this here one zipper, what's inside this zipper. I can't worry about nobody else's zipper, what they do with it, what it's inside of it, how they rock with it. And when you put it that way, they kind of like, yeah, I mean, but they are them, and you are you, and you have the freedom to be yourself. I need you to let them be themselves, right? You might, and the biggest thing that I've been saying, and I've been posting it as I've been, promoting this event, is you don't have to accept it. I just need you to respect it, and respect each person as a human being for who they are, whoever they are. You feel me? You don't have to agree with it. I don't need you to go put a flag on your car. Like, I don't even have a flag on my car. I am the flag. You feel me? I don't need that. Just respect everybody's walk of life and let them be. And I feel like the more that I'm like trying to teach that, like, I have to teach that to some of my own artists, because there'll be events where he'll say stuff and he'll get mad. That dude's drops the F-bomb, not the normal one we're used to, but the one you're not supposed to say. And I'm like, hey, bro, you can't say that, right? And he like, oh, why? Because you right. I'm gonna get it together. I'm sorry. I apologize. Type thing. But even just having that conversation of being on some like not around me, not at all, my guy. Like, teach your kids better. You better. We all gonna get better. And for him to sincerely be like, my bad. Okay, I was hot, but I'm gonna take that word out my brain. I'm gonna try to do better. So I do apologize. Type thing. It's like, okay, I just need baby steps. That's all I want, is because baby steps help to get bigger steps. And having these conversations instead of avoiding it because that's who he is type thing. It's teaching him, which is helping him teach his crew that's around him, because it's not just him, you feel me? It's us plus 10. So not only did we teach one, we taught 10. And it's like, cool, we all gonna be around each other a lot. So I need us all to learn and all get better. And they all be like, you got it, sis. You got it. You know what I'm saying? You the manager, so you got it. That's all I need, bro. That's all I need. And we all get better as a crew. So for me, again, it's having these hard conversations, especially around people who you can't be around me and be disrespectful. right? You can't be disrespectful, period, because I don't like that. I don't like bad energy. I'm very big on karma. We're going to respect everybody. We're going to treat everybody that's like the manager, just like the janitor. Like everybody gets treated the same. So when I see that, that's a standard that I have for everybody around me, right? And it's either you're going to elevate or you can't be around me type thing. And when you keep circles and stuff like that, and you walk I walk in positivity and doing the right thing. It's not about him or her. It's right or wrong for me, period. It's my own family. I'm like, bro, you're wrong, man. You're wrong. Like, you did it wrong. It is what it is. So when I keep that, walking in that, just that positivity and making sure that everybody around me is in check, it's going to make that domino effect that's eventually going to go back to these communities. But it's all about being authentic at the end of the day. This is who I am, bro. And you can't walk around here. I'm not going to let you walk around here talking crazy when you right next to me, when I have the wisdom and the knowledge to be able to not only break it down to you, but to get you to understand and see every part of life. So I'm not going to make you walk around like you sound crazy walking around like that. You can't be next to me sounding crazy. That's not what I do as a leader. That's not what I do as a person. So I'm going to lead whoever's around me and give them that knowledge. That way they can be better and take it back to their communities and their families. And then hopefully everybody gets a little more just understanding. And with more understanding comes respect. Again, I ain't tell you to adopt it. I just want you to respect it.
Yeah, I think there's so much of this too that, there's an intersection that's undeniable, right? Especially in this conversation when we're talking about rap or Black music, right? When we're talking about somebody who is a Black person, who's also, LGBTQ, all of these things, all of these pieces of our identities, they intersect, and they overlap. And so I think that's, when you're like, yo, this is, you can't accept one person and not the other. It's like, that's the most important thing. It's not like, when we do that, we become the oppressive person. Like, I deserve the rights, or I deserve to be, to live, the way that I want to live, but not you, because I disagree with you. And I'm sure if we flipped, from a conversation about queerness and flip that to a conversation about race, we would be in a different place, in a different conversation. And so I think that I've found that, that helping people, especially in our community, at least, to see that has been helpful, to just to show that this is the same things they're using to, in law and all of these other ways to keep us down in terms of our Blackness, right? They're doing the same thing to keep us in our places in terms of our gender identities, and they're used together. I wanted to kind of address, there's an uptick in suicides, particularly among young Black youth, queer youth, and almost 40% of youth suicide is made up of the LGBTQ community as a whole, which is like unbelievable. So I think what you're saying that's so important here is that, like, so much of it is the words that we use basically tell us who we feel is valuable enough to be on this planet and be who they are. Yes. And that's the whole conversation around the respect. You can think whatever backwards thing you want to think, but when we come in here, we are saying, I value you as a human being in front of me in all of your, in all of this. My question to you is, how do you navigate this in terms of lyrics, in terms of not just managing people, but also when we get into the music, when we actually start to navigate these pieces in the music? What does that look like? Is that a conversation you end up having a lot?
Sometimes, yeah. I feel like I have conversations about lyrics overall. You feel me? Like, especially since everything with, to be honest, it was before Young Thug. I was telling people when we had who was it, Bobby Shmurda, you feel me, from the beginning. You gotta watch what you putting out here in this music, y'all. But even more now, I'm always telling people, like, number one, watch what you're putting in this music, just period. You already know they're using it against you. But at the same time, I always challenge folks, and I'm like, listen, can your kids listen to your music? Because your biggest fan is gonna be your kids, right? So would you feel comfortable with your kids saying some of this stuff that you're saying for real, for real? I mean, they kind of look at me sideways, you feel me? I'm like, I'm not saying to be kids, Bob, you feel me? Like, I'm not telling you to water your music down or nothing like that, but just think about, like, what you actually putting out. For me, you feel me, music is spiritual, right? And I know I keep talking about, like, energy and all that, but that's just who I am type thing, you feel me? So when I'm asking them these questions, I'm like, you really want to put all this nasty, just a bad person, you feel me? Like, why do you have to say certain stuff that you say? if that's what you've been through, cool. Why you keep putting yourself in that past, right? If you
Right.
said you would change,
Where's the future? Where are we going now?
where's the evolution, right? And I tell
Oh,
people
yeah.
all the time, like, that's why one of my favorite rappers is Hove, is because he takes you through the story of what he's been through, right? Okay, cool. He was talking about what he did back when he was doing it. Now that he's a billionaire, he's not talking about that same stuff. He's talking about brands that we don't even know and words that we're having to look up because we're not in that type of lifestyle, right? So it's always like, why are you staying stagnant in that point? That's not who you are anymore. When you're going to evolve with your music, so your people around you can evolve. If you're wondering why you're so stagnant right now, it's because even the things that you're talking about in your music is keeping you down. Elevate yourself and elevate around you. And that comes with learning how to adapt to what's going on socially in the world, in society, and being able to, again, just be respectful. So when you kind of phase everything that way and not necessarily like, because with some of these artists, you can't come to them and be like, yo, you can't say that. I can say whatever I want to say. That's going to be too. So you got to put it to them in a kind of like a psychological way. It's like, oh, that's what you really want to put out to the world. I'm like, that's the message you want to put out there. Then they kind of go back and be like, I mean, I think I can. Yeah, find a different way to put that out there, bro. Because you might say that word and then next thing you know, you got a whole community on you and you never made it out of your community yet. You really want to go that route? Or you want, never mind, I'm finna go back to the.
Ooh, I love what you just said, because, you know, something I say a lot is, you know, I say this a lot to my clients, you know, when they're struggling, is like, you know, there's 7 billion, probably 8 billion people in the world, you know, like we have this tendency to just be here. And when we limit ourselves and are thinking that way, and we start to see that we are limited to that, you know, and it's not our fault. Like, here we are, right? We're here. This is where we were born into. This is the place we live, whatever our limitations are. But you have the opportunity now to see in this much stronger, bigger way. I love that what you're saying is really tying all of this into your evolution and growth as a person in all of the ways. You know, turn around and look, there's so many more people that could be listening and supporting you if we open ourselves up to that idea. I love that. So important.
That's
so
what
important.
I literally just told a client yesterday. I said, hey, listen, your makeup artist and your stylist and your hairstylist, they're all of LGBT. Why haven't you posted something yet to say that, like, at least you're an advocate or something? You feel me? Or that you respect them, or that you X, Y, and Z. Cool. Let's get it type thing. You feel me? I'm like, with you showing advocacy and you showing support, that can make other people open their minds up even more. You feel me? But on top of that, I'm like, listen, some of the most lucrative companies in the world are ran by people of this community. You might want to, and not even just for the money aspect, but like, do it to be a good person. But if you're smart, like, do it. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it's like, if it's actually who you are, you know,
right.
It's, you know, navigate that space, you know, and let people know that you support them, because I think that that's really what it comes down to, is people on every level. You know, when we feel ill, or we feel stressed, or we feel limited, or we feel like we're suffering, you know, a lot of it is because we don't have that support. And we just have to let people know, like, we're out there, like, people exist, like, people are here. We've always been here. Like, we're, you know, these are places that you can go and feel comfortable and safe, you know?
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything specifically, you know, that you feel like is a major issue in the music industry right now, that like is like, we need to deal with this right now? We really need to deal with blank right now.
Man. Transphobia.
Okay.
I can't wait until we get to the point as humans where people can be themselves, right? Because some of the most just slanderous against it folks are people who actually are attracted to trans people, right? But because they have to remain macho, and they have to be cool for their friends, and they have to fit this masculine, toxic masculinity, over masculine, you know what I'm saying? It's a lot going on right now. They can't be themselves, right? So it's so wild that like those people who can't be themselves then become like the terrorist of these folks, right? You feel me? Like, now you're so anti and everything is and it's like, but you love with one, and I hate it because it's so many of them, right? Like, everybody knows the music industry is it's a lot of stuff that looks like one thing and it's actually another, right? So when you know and see the behind the scenes, and it's like, why are you making this facade? why are y'all doing this? Why are you all like so much hate towards them when they've been around you for years? This is not something that's new. You feel me? Like, I feel like there was more acceptance years ago because this is not new. This was in the 80s. You feel me? This was in the 70s.
Yeah.
This is not new. You feel me? Like, I'm an old soul. I watch Columbo, right? So I can look at certain actresses and be like, wow, you know what I'm saying? It is what it is type thing. But there was issue with it back there. I don't know why it's more of an issue now. And I think a lot of it is, again, because acceptance. You have to look this way. You have people need to appear to be X, Y, and Z. So I can't wait till we get to a point where like none of that matters and everything is about being authentically yourself, because then I feel like the level of transphobia is going to drop so much because so many people are acting like they're phobic, right? They're acting and they're depicting like they are and they're posting like they are, but deep down inside, that's not who they are.
So they're protecting themselves, you know, it's like, it's just, and it's like, hey, you know, you'd act like, it's so fascinating, the things that we do to protect us that really harm us and harm others. And it's just completely unnecessary, but we've just been taught in so many ways that it is necessary. And it's truly not. Wow. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's one thing to like protect yourself, but when protecting yourself means hurting others, that's not protecting anymore. For me, like now you're just being hurtful. There's ways for you to protect yourself without having to hurt other people. Figure out how to make that happen, because you shouldn't have to hurt anybody because, you know, you're hurting yourself by just not being able to be true.
Yeah, so much of it is really about naming and language, right? When you think about language, you know, and I think this is where it connects to this like spiritual and just like music and getting sort of back to the root of really like, what are we doing here? You know, specifically, what are we doing here? But like that we can self-determine and self-actualize and be like, this is who I am and this is who we are. And a lot of times I've noticed that in my work, which is like working with, you know, a lot of people in a private room setting, like what's really going on is that we, you know, the ways that we feel betrayed by others, or we feel like nobody's doing things the way that I want them to do, it's really just a mirror or a reflection to all of the ways that we've completely abandoned ourselves. You know, and I think, you know, when I hear you talking, I'm like, that's, you know, so much of this is like, it is baby steps. It's like we have to unlearn here. You have been taught all of this stuff. It's not real. Let's undo it. Let's get free. But we do have to take it sort of piece by piece by piece. And a lot of it starts with language. And some of that is not just the language we use probably towards ourselves mimics the language that we use towards others. So like, if you're hard and nasty to other people, you're probably not super nice to yourself either. You know, and
like
so
you're being hard and nasty to everybody else because you haven't learned how to be nice to your own self.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, it really, so much of it is about growing as a human in all of these ways and getting free and liberating yourself. And we have the opportunity to do things like this and share our stories and who you are. And when people, you know, can deal with learning to not be defensive and hearing that and taking it and be like, I'm going to get better at this, they're really opening themselves up to just so much more joy in terms of like navigating the world and themselves, you know? And I love that so much. We're about at 2:30. Is there anything you want to kind of throw in here that you feel like we need to chat about before we kind of open the floor up to everyone? Everybody's on a different time zone too. So I said 2:30 because I'm on the East Coast at 11:30. So whatever time zone you are, yeah, anything you want to add before we kind of jump in?
I mean, I think it's, you know, do what you got to do and do your own due diligence to figure out how you navigate, you know, respecting other people. Some people, you know, you have folks in your family who you can ask questions to. You know, there are people around. There's a lot of internet stuff. You can do your Googles. You feel me? I know it's hard to sometimes have those conversations. Again, I come from, I've had to out myself quite a billion times to certain people. You feel me? So I know it's not hard to do. It's not hard to have these conversations, but I feel like find a way to do it. It just makes life easier overall. You feel me? It's 2023. Things are not going to stop evolving. Things have been a lot different from I'm in the LGBT community, and sometimes I don't even know everything, right? You feel me? So it's like, just do your due diligence and just try to adapt with the world. That way it's easier for everybody. You feel me? Like some things that we can do easily, other people cannot. You feel me? And that is very, very prevalent in the LGBT community. You feel me? From, okay, cool, marriage is legal, but it's so many loopholes, and now it's so many threats that it's not legal. You feel me? There are people who are losing rights. There are people who don't have insurance now anymore. Like, there are a lot of things that you can do, like go to a hospital and know that you're straight and covered, that some people can't do anymore. You feel me? There's a lot of things where you can, know that, hey, if your husband passes away, like, y'all good because y'all are married, X, Y, and Z. That's not the same with other, walks of life, where it's like, cool, we were married, but they're not honoring it because of our sexuality that we decided, like, it's crazy for real, for real. So it's like, just learn to understand, everybody's different walks of life and from who they come, whether LGBT or not. Just be open. That way you can be more understanding as a human being, because what some things we take for granted, everybody else don't have, man.
Yeah, I think so much of it is like that alignment and who you want to align yourself with. When you're talking about these sort of human rights, when you think about a lot of these bills, these anti-trans bills that are coming out, when you look at the places where this is happening, they're the same places that are going back to really like diving in deep in terms of legalizing marrying children off. It's like, oh, that's cool. And also trans identity, not cool. It's like, you have to see, like, where are all these other people aligning themselves? Like, what is really going on here, and start to really see the bigger picture. And I think it starts to make a lot more sense, but we have to educate ourselves in a lot of ways, because they're they're clearly taking this stuff out of schools. They don't want us to do this work, so we really have to rely on each other. And it takes, like you said, you have to have boundaries. You have to be like, this is not going to happen around me. This is not a thing. And I think that right there is like one of the most important things you can do for any group to protect any marginalized identity, is to have those boundaries. Be like, nope, you go out there and you could be as whatever you want to be, but when you're here and you're with me and you're with the people I love, we're not playing. And that alone is such a massive thing to be able to do. I'm so grateful for this conversation, Jay. I'm going to open up the floor. I think there are some very fancy people on the other end of this that, let's see, that are navigating some of this.
Yes, we are here. I will take the floor. Thank you so much, Liana, for navigating this conversation. And Jay, thank you so much for just coming and sharing your experience and just being willing to take the seat on this platform. We want to remind those who are in our audience that you can use the Q&A function to drop your questions into the chat. But I know that I have a question and Mandy has a question. So I'm going to throw my question out there first, and then Mandy will go after me. My question to you, Jay, is, before we even started recording today and we came on, we talked about the Recording Academy. We're both members of the Recording Academy. We're both members of SONA. We're both members of a lot of music industry organizations. What, if any, kind of call to action do you feel like should be presented from an organizational standpoint? Where are music industry organizations lacking in really advocating or being allies to the LGBTQ audience? Because, let me add to this, because I feel like there's a huge commercialization. Everybody wants to throw a rainbow flag on everything, but it's like, what are you doing? So that, that was really my main question to you.
I agree. I feel like you really see everybody's quote unquote true colors during Pride. You feel me? Because everybody all of a sudden is so accepting. And then, a month later, it's like, cool, nothing. You see all these cool little commercials and all these pledges, and nobody ever follows through let me not say nobody, but a lot of people don't. You feel me? A lot of people do it so they can sell merch or push a special or, get more data from certain, demographics that they might not have. Like, it's a gimmick for real. So I think, especially, I would love to see the Recording Academy. Like, did they have a Pride event? It's a lot of us in the Academy. I might not be paying attention, but I don't think I saw anything, right? So even them being accountable, you feel me? Like, you can't have all of these people who are under this umbrella and not be able to represent them individually. You feel me? Like, so cool, we have Black Music Month, but let's do something for Pride. Let's do something for our Indigenous members. Let's do something for some of our folks that might be Irish, wherever they're from and whoever celebrates. Let's highlight everybody. You feel me? But I'm also with you where it's like people, I'm not with the folks who are just throwing a rainbow up for a couple of bucks, right? Who's actually doing some advocacy, who's actually doing some events where it's hosted by, you know, trans people type thing. Like what's her name? Kim Petras, who just did the show, what, Unholy? Why is she not doing a chat on behalf of the, you know, the Academy or whatever, you know, association it might be because it's Pride Month? Why is her and not Sam not doing some type of talk where they're talking with kids who might have also went through issues coming out but are inspired by these artists? I think a lot of these people only want to talk when it benefits, because if not, then they have to go through the whole, you're part of the agenda defense, right? And you don't want to take that defense, but you want to take the money from it. That's a lot of what it's about to me. You feel me? Like avoiding those conversations. If we don't talk about it that much, we don't have to defend ourselves and figure out what our answer is and what's our angle, because they don't have it. But they like the money from it though.
Mm.
I want to see it all year. I like, we talk about it with Black History Month, like every month is Black History Month, like because American history is Black history. It's the same thing with Pride. It's the same thing with everything. So I think like, I would love us, I think we have to start, right? It's baby steps. It's like, all right, we start with this, you know, drawing attention to these things, but at what, we've been doing this a while. At what point is this going to be really woven in to all the time? I don't want to just hear certain voices once a month. You know, like we need to start really integrating this stuff into our, you know, into our regular programming everywhere, you know, and kind of move away, like show that evolution, like Jay's saying, show that evolution that it's not just a month to make money. This is like really being an ally, whatever, all these words, we show that in that action all the time, all year long.
I love it. Mandy, I'll give it to you.
I'm just so thankful. This has been an amazing conversation, and I was actually on a nice, really long, lovely walk this morning with a dear musical friend of mine, and I was trying. We got to talking about this stuff because I was you know telling him about the Zoom, but also, you know, I have my earliest mentors were trans and LGBTQIA. I'm queer, and he was like, "Well, why do you call yourself queer?" And I said, "Well, because queer is like this inclusive term for me. You know, queer means any of us, you know, lesbian. I came out as bisexual when I was 16 or whatever, you know, and I've, you know, have a longtime girlfriend and stuff. So, you know, but it doesn't matter what brand of queer you are. We're all on this beautiful, hence the rainbow spectrum, you know, and it's just, and he was like, well, it's not insulting. I'm like, no, because we've reclaimed the word. And then he was like, so all these, and then we got to the topic of gender and trans and this and that, and he was like, well, why, if only such a small percentage of people on the earth are like this, do we all need to change the language? And I just loved what Jay was saying about stagnation and evolving, and why do we need to work? I mean, like, we need to know who we've been, but we also need to not stay there so that we can become who we're supposed to become. So this, I guess I don't really have a question other than, you know, how do we get people? And I know he wanted to understand. He was being really earnest. He wasn't being any kind of anything, except just, you know, trying to understand it. And you know, I just, if there's any suggestions of how we can like get people who do want to understand, you know, he's like, break it down, make it smaller, you know, and how do you, and I was like, well, how do you tell people that you deserve to live? So I don't know what my question is. If you could unpack that
I mean,
for a
how do you
second or
even, I
not.
mean, that alone, like, how do you tell people that you want to live, right? Well, they're, you know,
Sometimes you
there
just
you
gotta
go.
say it, man. Like you really just gotta tell it to them. And I'm only saying that because I had a uncle, right? So my uncle has twins. They were originally Troy and Corey. Now they are Corey and Paris, right? So I seen my uncle about 3 years ago, and I asked him like, where the kids at? Where the fam at? Type thing. Well, Corey is here, and the other one is. I said, "What you mean the other one? Come on, man." He's like, "Look, Nisi, I'm like cool with you, right? But I can't address him as my daughter. That's my son." Said, "Listen, let's have a real conversation. If you can accept me, you need to accept her." I said, "Here's the thing: you being funny and trying to call her Troy is making her not want to be here, right? I said, so that's your child, right? He said, yeah. I said, you love your child because you created them and that's your child, right? So yeah, I said, so do me a favor. If you can accept me, her name is Paris. And I need you, if you love your child and you want her to stay here, because I see what she posts. You might not see what's going on. She's struggling and she's been struggling for a while. She's been transitioning since we were 16. I'm 31. I was maybe 27 having this conversation. I'm glad I had this conversation because I looked on some pictures a couple months later and it was him with both of them. Here are my kids, Corey and Paris. So sometimes you got to let people know, hey, bro, leave people alone for they not be here because you want to be in bully. Leave people alone.
Yeah.
You don't realize you trying to pick on them because you might have some of them same sensations gonna make them not be here. And when you have that on your conscience, you're not gonna be able to go to sleep at night, my dude. So listen, that's why I have, how do I have these conversations? I come pure and I have to, sometimes it depends on who's asking how deep I gotta go into it because it be real like that. So like I had to ask my uncle, listen, do you want your child not to be here? I've had to have these conversations with my own mother because my mother is also trying to figure some things out, right? And evolving with what's going on. And I never forget, we had a conversation recently and she was like, I just don't understand all these, pronouns, this, and that. And I'm so glad I'm done raising kids, so I ain't got to worry about that. And I just looked at her and was like, I just want you to know.
Here.
Number one, you got me, so it's never going to be over type thing. Number two,
it's never over.
It's never over, bro. We're raising my niece, who my niece is so progressive, right? I learned everything from my niece. She's the ones who tell me, like, you can't say this anymore. This is how it goes, da-da-da-da. My niece is very outspoken about who she is. So I'm having to break it down to my mom, like, hey, listen, I just want you to know why you're saying that you don't have to go through this. She's giving me some hints that, things might be a little different as well. So I need you to get on your stuff and get ready to have conversations about who might come on the other side of this door someday when she bringing folks home. So get it together. She's like, deer in the headlights. I'm like, so what do you, I said, the first thing you do when they come in, you say, hey, baby, what's your pronoun? And whatever they say that answer is, he, she, her, cat, dog. That's what you call them. Nice to meet you. Okay, baby, now listen, welcome to the house. You want some Kool-Aid? You want some, and you do everything just the same, just like it was anybody else. And she got taken aback a little bit and she was like, you know what? I'm gonna get it together because you're right. And I'm like, listen, you ain't got to accept it. You don't have to know every definition. When they come in, you give them respect like everybody else, because if you don't do that to them, that means you wouldn't do that to me for real, for real. So you can't fake in front of me. And I ain't having it for real, because I'm 30 something now. I'm not holding nothing back. Whatever I might have held back before, it's over now, you guys. Like, now you get the full asshole of Jay, brother.
Yes.
Like, and I want every kid under this house to be able to have the same thing. So I am, as you can see, I am a raw person. That's all I can give people is raw honesty. But I'm not going to sugarcoat nothing because that's what the world is for, not me. Feel me? I'm going to give it to you like it's supposed to be so you can understand it. And then it's going to make you, at the end of the night, leave people alone because you don't want nobody bothering your peace either.
I love it. That is the thing that you've really expressed through all of this is that you've used the power of your platform and the power of your presence in that room to speak on somebody else's behalf that didn't have the language, that didn't have the words. And it's not expecting an immediate result, where it's like when you use that one moment to stand up for somebody, you don't know when that changed your uncle. You don't know how long he sat and marinated on it to get to that picture with the three of them. Even that conversation with your mom, like just really planting the seed through the power of your platform and your presence. And I think that that's something that should resonate with people, not just people who identify as queer, but people who claim to be allies of use the power of your platform. We say that a lot when we're talking about race and we're asking white people to use their privilege and their platform on behalf of Black people or any marginalized racial group. It's really the same. When, Liana and all of us got together and we had that conversation. And Liana, I don't want to let you off the hook before we close out today. Can you please talk about that intersectionality piece that we talked about when we were preparing for today, because I do think that every single thing that the both of you have talked about today has so many implications across the board. So I definitely want to throw it to you as our expert today to really give our audience that piece of information as well.
Yeah, so the concept of intersectionality is that it's a term that was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, who basically, in a nutshell, it's kind of exactly what it sounds like. It's how do we all intersect? How does our race intersect with our gender, intersect with our class, intersect with our sexuality? I mean, and so on, right? All of these different, pieces of who we are, So that's why when we name ourselves, it's so important. I think something that, we're going to have this sort of call to action coming up next in terms of like, well, what are you going to do? And it just came to mind that this is one thing that you can do is really name yourself. Sit down with a piece of paper and be like, what is my race? Name yourself. I'm a Black person, but I was raised by white people in Pittsburgh. I was adopted as a child from another country. Everybody called me Brazilian, or they called me, adopted mostly, or Latina. No one called me Black my whole life. And I got to this point where I was in my 30s and I'm like, I did an exercise like this. And I was like, I'm a Black person. And then I started feeling a lot of shame about it. Like, what if I'm not? Like, which is wild, right? Like, what if I'm not? Like, what if I'm really not? It gave me so much anxiety. So, I mean, of course, I went on this whole quest. I got all this DNA. I did all of these things. I figured it out. And yeah, okay, so I'm Black, just in case anybody's wondering. It's true. But I always felt so much guilt. I was called, white girl, all of these names growing up because I was raised by white people, and all of these things happened. So I think, that moment where I got to say, this is who I am. So intersectionality is you recognizing that you are not just part of one community. None of us are monoliths. None of us are just like, I'm just a Black person and that's it. I'm just gay. It's like what we have to name all of those pieces. So I would sit down as soon as possible right now when you get off this call and write it down. Who are you? What is your race? How do you, and this is all up to you. This is not who told you what, your mom said, blah, blah, blah. This is really like, what do you connect to? What is your race? What is your gender, if any, right? How do you consider your sexuality, if any, right? What do you have a religious affiliation? How do you consider yourself in terms of class now, also compared to when you were younger, right? And sometimes this can be a great exercise to do, how you would have named yourself when you were a kid versus how you would name yourself now. But those intersections are extremely important because, again, if you don't understand those intersections, then you start to get into this narrative where everything becomes binary and it's okay for me, but not for you. It's okay for Black people to want to be free, but it's not okay for gay people to want to be free. It's okay for white people to blah, 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 but it's not okay for this other group over here to blah, blah, blah. So we need to see that we are pieces that overlap all of these things. So if you want to be about, you can't say that you're a feminist but not practice anti-racism because they're overlapped. You can't say I care about gay people because I'm friends with a gay person, but they're a white gay person, but I'm not, Black people, I don't know. You have to start to understand that we are all part of this. And so in order for me to say that I want to fight for my liberation as one group, I have to be able to fight for the liberation of all people. And that's how we really get free. And then also understanding that the point of intersectionality is understanding systems. So how do those systems function? And so those systems show up in lots of different ways, and that it's the same systems that keep everybody oppressed. One of the reasons I think that I decided to do this work with SONA that was so important is because when I think about the opposite of oppression, I think about creativity. Creativity is how we survive. And creativity has to be our way out of this. It has to be our way to get free. It's how so many of us have stayed that way, and it's how we're going to keep evolving, just like Jay said. So I think that this is the piece that's kind of like anti-racism 101, is like intersectionality. How do we start this conversation? We can't fight for one group and not another. So again, Kimberly Crenshaw, that's kind of who coined this term, and where you can learn all of those kinds of things on the interwebs. If you Google her name, lots of information will totally pop up. And I think the other piece that's important is talking about the word intersectionality and talking about the function of language. Like, what is the function of language? So, Mandy had mentioned, what are you supposed to, this idea of like, well, we're supposed to change all these words or change, these, but that's the function of language. The function of language, is supposed to really map what's happening over time. That's its function, is to do that, is so that we can see all of the different ways, that we give meaning to concepts as they evolve. So that's why words can have new meanings. They can have different meanings. It changes. It's fluid, right? And again, it's not this binary, girl, boy, this, that. It is fluid. That's what the rainbow is. That's what all of these things are. That's why we have lots of colors in it. That's why we added black. We added all these other things to the rainbow, because it really is about fluidity. And the closer that we get to that mental flexibility in psychology terms, but fluidity, the more we become free. And again, we do that by being creative, and it activates our creative minds, which is why the work that you're all doing is just like the most important work, I hope that answered your question quickly. I did jump right in without really kind of explaining that too much, but
no, you did. And that was absolutely perfect. And I think it's a great segue into the different kind of challenges that we have for our audience, even to tie the beginning of your explanation of Bo, of saying, name yourself. And one of the things that you mentioned while you were talking is, oh my gosh, what if I'm not? And I think that there are a lot of people who may fall into whatever spectrum and say, what if I'm not? Other people may have you thinking it's just a phase, you'll grow out of it, whatever it does. And the point that you made is, it does not matter. How do you define yourself? I recently saw an interview with Janelle Monáe, and she said that how I feel myself is the alpha and the omega. There is no one who can tell me something about myself I don't already know. And when you know yourself, there is very little that someone on the outside can do to impact how you feel about yourself. And I think that that's really great. I, again, thank you on behalf of myself and Mandy as co-chairs of DEI. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Liana, for not just having this conversation, but being the very first of our SONA salons meant to create community in the songwriting and just music industry community for things that are often brushed under the rug. We don't act as if they're happening. And when we're talking about being an advocacy organization as SONA, how are we being advocates? And one of those ways is amplifying conversations like this. And so for our audience members, we don't just want you to hear this and feel good and feel revved up and be like, oh, well, I did my duty because I listened to the replay or I sat in. We want you to go out and take the things that you learned today, the conversations that you've heard today, and challenge yourself. So we're asking you to challenge yourselves in 3 ways. One is to actually be an ally, make a pledge to be an ally if you have not already. And even if you are, share via social. We have a link for glad.org to take action that has a whole social media kit that says that you have the back of the queer community and really take a stand. The second is turn your curiosity into a conversation with the goal of finding a commonality. And Liana and Jay started the conversation out there with their commonalities. And one of the things that Jay talked about a lot is the tone of the conversation, how you approach the conversation and your curiosity, and managing those situations with respect. And so our second challenge is to turn your curiosity into a conversation with the goal of finding a commonality. And then the third is really educate yourself on how you truly can be an ally and the local laws that are impacting the LGBTQ a community. And so we have a link from the Human Rights Council that has a guide to, number one, support for different identities. It has a guide for speaking to your lawmakers, and it has a state-by-state guide to help you understand what's going on in your local community, to be able to reach out to local legislators and let them know that you are taking a stand and that you are being an ally. If this is your first time joining a SONA event, do not make this your last. Go to wearesona.org and become a member today. And as I mentioned, hey, Jay has the shirt. You can get your handy dandy shirt when you become a member. Don't wait till membership month, which is next month. You can join and become a member today. And then we also have our second SONA Salon that is coming up in July for Disability Awareness Week. We are partnered with Ramped, and we are dropping the link in the chat if you want to go ahead now and register for next month's salon. And that's it. Thank you so much again, Jay, Liana, Mandy, Suzanne. Thanks, everybody. Clap it up for Suzanne, who did all the technical work behind the scenes. She's the director of communications for SONA. So thank you. She is the machine behind getting all of this out. And everyone, have a great afternoon.
Shay, Shay, I know we're late. I know we're not really late. There's 3 more minutes. Do you mind if I use the 3 minutes, well, actually like 30 seconds, to just mention a couple of things about the bills, the anti-LGBTQ bills? This literally just popped up on my computer as a message, like in some email. And I clicked on it and I was like, this might be relevant. I just have to read them. I have to read them because this is why we have a call to action.
We lobby Congress. Yes, tell us.
Lobby
Yes.
Congress. The first thing that it says is 80 bills aim to prevent transgender youth from playing school sports consistent with their gender identity. 19 states now exclude transgender athletes in school sports. 19. 42 bills, this is what's up right now. 42 bills to prevent transgender and non-binary youth from receiving life-saving, medically necessary gender-affirming healthcare. 42 bills for that alone. 5 states have now already restricted access to gender-affirming care. 70 curriculum censorship bills tried to turn back the clock and restrict teachers from discussing LGBTQ+ issues at all, and other marginalized communities in their classrooms, and 7 have already been passed into law. So these are what's up right now. 80 bills, 80 bills, plus 42 bills, plus 70 bills. Like, this is where we're at. This is the levels here. So yeah, call your legislators, and I will send this link to you so we can get it out to everybody too.
Thank you so much, Liana. This was really, really great. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it just emphasizes our last part of the challenge of there are so many things going around. SONA at its heart is an advocacy organization. And when we talk about advocating for songwriters, we are talking about all songwriters and the things that impact their lives, their children, their families, and this is it. And this is your opportunity to join SONA in its efforts to be an advocate. So as mentioned, there are links, although we shared them in the chat. In the coming weeks, we will have a link to this replay, and it will also link to all the resources for the challenges, including the new link that was mentioned by Liana. So again, thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye.